I still remember the day we brought the car home. My boyfriend Leo's first real investment after years of struggling. It was nothing flashy. Not some roaring sports car or luxury SUV. Just a solid, dependable Honda Civic that ran like a dream and had a radio that still played CDs, which he weirdly loved. He bought it secondhand from a family friend. Paid every cent from his savings, money he'd earned working extra shifts and skipping nights out while everyone else our age was partying. That car was his freedom, his independence. And in many ways, it became our getaway too. We'd take it on midnight drives, windows down, music up, and just talk. No destination, just the road and the hum of the engine between our words. But I never imagined that something so simple, so personal, would become the centerpiece of one of the most twisted betrayals I've ever experienced. It started like most betrayals do, quietly. My sister, Brielle, had just finalized her divorce. She was a mess of mascara-streaked tears and explosive rants about how men were garbage and how she deserved a break from this toxic world. I'll admit, I felt bad for her at first. Her ex was no saint, but Brielle had always been a master of taking things too far, and somehow every disaster in her life turned into everyone else's problem to solve. My parents, who had always babied her, rushed in like clockwork. "She's fragile right now," my mother whispered as she helped Brielle move into the guest room. "Be understanding." And I tried. God knows I tried. But one day turned into a week into a month. Soon, it was like our entire household revolved around her broken heart. Meanwhile, Leo and I were picking up the pieces of our own lives, bills, work, his job interviews, my night shifts, and none of it seemed to register with my family. We were invisible. Until the day they suddenly remembered us, because they needed something. It was my mom who brought it up first, like it was no big deal. We were standing in the kitchen, she was pouring tea, and without even looking at me, she said, "You know, it would really help if Leo could lend Brielle his car for a little while. Just until she gets back on her feet." I blinked, completely caught off guard. "Wait, what?" She gave me that look, the one she always used when she was trying to pretend she was being perfectly reasonable, even when she absolutely wasn't. "It's just sitting in the driveway half the time. And your sister needs a change of scenery. Maybe a little trip. She's earned it." "Mom, that's Leo's car. He needs it for work. He literally just got a second interview downtown. Can he take the bus? Or you can drive him, right? It's not forever." My jaw dropped. My own mother, asking me, no, expecting me to just hand over my boyfriend's most valuable possession to my sister because she wanted to take a post-divorce vacation? It wasn't a request. It was an assumption. And I should have said no right then. I should have drawn the line. But instead, I hesitated. I didn't want to start a war. I didn't want to be the selfish daughter who didn't support her broken sister. And I knew that saying no would turn the entire house against me. So I did what I now regret more than anything. I told Leo. They asked if Brielle could borrow your car for a few days, just to clear her head. He looked at me like I'd lost my mind. "You mean the car I used to get to my job? The car I paid for? With my name on the registration?" "I know," I said quickly. "It's ridiculous. But if I say no, it'll start a firestorm. Maybe we just say yes for a couple days and then—" He held up his hand. He didn't yell. He didn't freak out. He just looked disappointed, and somehow that was worse. "No, that car's mine. And I'm not loaning it out like it's a Netflix password." I nodded, relieved, grateful that at least one person in this world still had boundaries. But what I didn't know, what I never could have predicted, was that my family wasn't going to take no for an answer. And by the time I found out what they'd done, it was too late. It was a Tuesday, I remember, because Leo had made pancakes that morning, humming to himself like he always did when he was trying to stay hopeful. He had an interview coming up and needed the car for a prep meeting downtown. I told him I'd tidy up around the house and meet him for dinner later. There was nothing unusual about that morning, until my phone rang. Leo's name lit up the screen, but when I answered, his tone wasn't like him at all. "Where is it?" Just those 3 words. "Where's what?" I asked, not grasping yet. "The car." I walked out of the building, and it's gone. It's not in the driveway. I felt the air punch out of my lungs. "Wait, what?" I ran outside barefoot, my heart climbing up my throat. And sure enough, the driveway was empty. Leo's car was gone. Just gone. At first, I thought maybe it had been towed. Maybe there was some ridiculous permit violation I hadn't noticed. Or worse, maybe someone had stolen it. We didn't live in the best neighborhood. But this felt personal. That's when I saw my dad in the front yard, casually pulling weeds from the flower bed like nothing had happened. "Dad," I called, trying to keep the panic out of my voice. "Where's Leo's car?" He didn't even look surprised. Just glanced up and said it with complete calm. "Oh, that? It was picked up this morning. Sold it." The world slowed. "You, what?" "We sold it," he repeated, like he was talking about a used lamp from the garage, "to pay for Brielle's trip. She needed something uplifting after the year she's had." I froze. My mind refused to compute what I was hearing. They had sold Leo's car. Without permission. Without notice. Without a single ounce of shame. I stormed into the house. My mother was sitting at the dining table, calmly sipping coffee and scrolling through her tablet like it was just another ordinary morning. "You sold Leo's car?" I snapped, voice shaking. She didn't flinch. Didn't even look up at first. "Yes," she said finally. "It was necessary." "Necessary? That car doesn't even belong to you." She sighed, clearly annoyed that I was raising my voice. "It's just a vehicle, sweetheart. You're acting like we burned down your house. It was Leo's. He paid for it with his own money. You had no right." She placed the tablet down slowly, like I was some child throwing a tantrum. "You two live under our roof. That car has been parked in our driveway for over a year. Frankly, it's part of this household." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She spoke as if proximity gave them ownership. As if living under their roof made all our belongings theirs. "That's theft," I said through gritted teeth. "It's support," she countered. "Your sister needed it more. This is what family does." "Family? Since when does family steal?" I couldn't be in that house another minute. I walked upstairs and grabbed the first bag I could find. Packed the essentials, clothes, documents, my laptop. I left the rest. Leo deserved better than this. We both did. I didn't even look at my mother again as I left. Didn't ask her to explain herself. Because deep down, I knew she didn't feel the need to. To her, this wasn't betrayal. This was entitlement masquerading as love. When I got to Leo and told him everything, I expected him to yell. To break something. But he just stood there in the middle of the apartment, silent. Hurt. Then he nodded, picked up his keys, what was left of them, and said, "Let's go to the police." And that's what we did. Filed a report. Showed the registration. Spoke to an officer who looked just as baffled as we felt. The report was taken seriously, but it wasn't simple. The car had been on their property, and they'd used that to justify it. But the paperwork didn't lie. The title was in Leo's name. And what they did was illegal. Later that night, as I scrolled through social media trying to distract myself, I saw it. Brielle, smiling on a beach. Frozen margarita in hand. Designer sunglasses. Perfect manicure. Captioned with one simple sentence. "Healing finally begins. Couldn't have done it without my amazing family." No mention of us. No acknowledgement of the theft. Just her, enjoying the sun, funded by Leo's hard work. The next day felt like a dream I couldn't wake up from, only it wasn't a dream. It was a slow, suffocating realization that my family had crossed a line I didn't even know existed. And when I say family, I use the term loosely. Because no family does what mine did and calls it love. Leo was quiet all morning. He didn't blame me, not out loud. But I could feel it, the unspoken weight between us. It wasn't mistrust. It was disappointment. The kind that sits in the air like humidity, heavy and sticky and impossible to ignore. I tried to fix it the only way I knew how. I confronted them again. I drove back to the house, unsure what I even hoped to accomplish. An apology? A refund? Basic human decency? When I walked through the door, my mother was already waiting for me in the kitchen, arms crossed, face set like stone. "Back already?" she said. "I thought you'd be too embarrassed." I blinked. Embarrassed? For what? For how you acted. The drama. The threats. Over a car. She said it like I'd thrown a fit over spilled milk. Like Leo's stolen property and our violated boundaries were nothing more than an inconvenience to her daily routine. "You stole his car. You sold it. We helped your sister," she snapped. "And you? You chose a man over blood." That line. That tired, manipulative, guilt-laced line. I'd heard it my entire life whenever I disagreed with her. Family first. But what they really meant was, family means we get to take. And you don't get to question it. I left before I said something I couldn't take back. But even then, I didn't cut them off completely. Not yet. Why? Because I was still clinging to the belief that maybe, just maybe, they'd realize how cruel they had been. That guilt would set in. That someone, anyone, would show an ounce of remorse. But instead, They doubled down. That night, my aunt texted me out of nowhere. Someone I hadn't spoken to in months. Her message? Your mom told me what happened. Can't believe you're attacking her like this after all she's done for you. Another message followed. This time from my cousin. Brielle deserves happiness. It's just a car. You're being selfish. Selfish. Me. For standing up for someone I loved. For calling out theft. For not smiling while they dismantled our lives like it was a family bonding activity. I realized then, this wasn't just about a car anymore. It was about the rot that had spread through my family long before Leo ever came into the picture. The quiet favoritism. The constant gaslighting. The way Brielle's needs always came first, no matter what the cost was for the rest of us. And Brielle? Oh, she wasn't just sipping cocktails anymore. She was tagging new outfits, boasting about upgrades, renting scooters, paragliding, living like she'd won the lottery. She even posted a motivational quote on her story. You can't start the next chapter of your life if you keep rereading the last one. With a photo of her tossing her wedding ring into the sea. People were cheering her on in the comments, calling her strong, brave, empowered. And all I could think was, she's celebrating a stolen vacation with our loss. With Leo's sacrificed. With my silenced. With their betrayal. For a while, it felt like we were the only ones who cared about what had happened. Leo and I were alone in this fight, surrounded by people who twisted the narrative, painted us as dramatic, ungrateful, even vindictive. But then, justice started to stir. It began with a voicemail. A detective from the local precinct had reviewed the report we filed. And despite the complications of shared property and familial ties, there was something they couldn't overlook: the bill of sale. Leo's car hadn't just been borrowed or relocated. It had been sold to a stranger for cash, without title transfer. The buyer, it turned out, was some guy from an online marketplace. He thought the car was a gift from a generous father helping out his daughter's friend. He even had a copy of a fake bill of sale, one my father forged, complete with a fake signature scribbled over Leo's printed name. That changed everything. We met with the officer in person a few days later. He was no nonsense, the kind of man who looked like he'd seen enough family drama to fill a courtroom. Still, even he winced when he read the full report. This isn't a civil issue anymore, he said. It's criminal. Leo's name on the registration. No release of liability. A forged document. That wasn't just shady. It was illegal. When the officer called my parents, I wasn't there, but I heard about it afterward. My dad tried to play dumb. Said he was confused about ownership, that the car had been parked at their house for so long. It felt like community property. But the detective wasn't buying it. A few days later, my parents received a formal letter. Not a full arrest, but a warning and a demand to return the car or pay full restitution immediately. That was the moment the mask started to crack. My mother called me at 11:47 p.m. I didn't pick up. Then came the texts. Are you happy now? You're tearing this family apart. After all we've done for you. Then, Brielle joined in. You're really going to ruin Mom and Dad's lives over a car? I hope you're proud. I didn't reply, because nothing I could say would matter to people who twisted guilt into virtue, who stole and then expected praise for it. 2 days later, I heard from the buyer, the man who now unknowingly owned Leo's stolen car. The police had contacted him. He was told the vehicle had been wrongfully sold and would need to be returned. His response? Surprisingly kind. I'm not looking for trouble, he told us. If you can reimburse me, I'll drop it off myself. I just want to do the right thing. Leo and I pooled our savings. It was everything we had left after rent, food, bills. But we paid him. Because unlike my family, we understood that doing the right thing sometimes means sacrifice. A week later, Leo's Civic was back in the driveway of our tiny rented home. Dented. Dirty. A few scratches here and there. But it was his again. And when he sat behind the wheel, gripping the steering wheel in silence, I saw something shift in him. Not just relief, but resolve. This wasn't just about the car anymore. It was about standing up to people who thought they could take and never be held accountable. A few weeks passed. Long enough for the dust to settle, but not long enough for the anger to fade. Leo had his car back, yes. But the damage? It was far more than mechanical. The silence from my parents was deafening. No calls. No visits. Not even passive-aggressive texts. It was as if I had ceased to exist in their world. And then suddenly, just as I began to hope maybe they'd leave us alone for good, my mother called. Again. This time, I answered. Sweetheart, she said. Her voice softened into a syrupy lilt I hadn't heard since I was a teenager. Can we talk? I should have hung up right there. But curiosity, or maybe the remnants of some broken childlike hope, made me stay on the line. Talk about what? About putting all this behind us. About coming home. Your sister misses you. I actually laughed. A sharp, humorless sound. She misses me? After what you all did? My mother sighed like I was being the unreasonable one. You know she didn't mean any harm. She's been through so much, the divorce, the stress. It wasn't ideal, I'll admit. But we're still family. Ah, there it was again. That word. Family. Twisted, stretched, weaponized until it no longer resembled anything kind or safe. I asked her plainly, do you regret what you did? She went quiet. I pressed again. Do you regret selling Leo's car? Lying? Forging a document? Do you even care how much that hurt him? Hurt me. Her reply? What's done is done. You know I don't like to dwell in the past. There was no apology. No ownership. Just a plea for reconciliation, as long as it required no consequences. A few days later, an envelope arrived in the mail. Inside was a handwritten letter from my father. Long, flowery, full of lines like, we all make mistakes. This family was built on love. Don't let outsiders tear us apart. But nowhere did he say, I'm sorry. Not to Leo. Not to me. Instead, he closed the letter with, let's move on from this foolishness. Come by on Sunday. Your mother's making your favorite, roast chicken and garlic potatoes. Like a meal could wipe the slate clean. Leo read the letter without saying a word, then folded it carefully and slid it back into the envelope. They don't want to fix anything, he said. They just want to make sure you don't embarrass them again. He was right. That entire performance, my mom's syrupy phone call, my dad's letter, the promise of a home-cooked meal, wasn't reconciliation. It was containment. They didn't care about healing. They cared about optics. As long as I played the obedient daughter, kept quiet, and let it go, I was welcome. Otherwise, I was the problem. I sat on the porch that night with Leo, the air cool and heavy, the stars scattered like broken glass across the sky. I think I'm done, I whispered. With them. I nodded. And for the first time since everything happened, I felt light. Not happy, not whole, but free. Because I finally understood. Forgiveness doesn't mean returning to what hurt you. It means refusing to let it control you anymore. I didn't go to Sunday dinner. No surprise there. But what did surprise me was the sheer volume of backlash that came the next day. My phone lit up like wildfire. Missed calls, voice messages, angry texts from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. Suddenly, everyone had an opinion. And every single one of them acted like I had burned the family tree to the ground. One aunt, who I barely even knew growing up, messaged, I don't know what's gotten into you, but your parents love you. You should be ashamed of yourself. Another cousin wrote, Leo turned you against us. You were never like this before him. As if Leo had cast some kind of evil spell on me. As if standing up for what's right meant I had been brainwashed. But the worst message? That came from Brielle. She sent a photo. It was of her and my parents at brunch, smiling, toasting mimosas. The caption read, surround yourself with people who support your healing journey. I stared at that photo for a long time. There they were, sipping orange juice and playing happy family, while I was still trying to process the emotional wreckage they had caused. The caption wasn't meant to be inspirational. It was a blade, and they wanted me to bleed. But this time, I didn't just get mad. I got methodical. I pulled up the full digital trail. Screenshots, texts, copies of the forged sale documents, audio clips, voicemails, even the formal notice from the precinct warning them of possible charges if restitution wasn't made. I compiled it all. Because if they wanted to act like I was the problem, if they were going to smear Leo's name and paint me as the ungrateful daughter, I wanted the truth documented, preserved, visible. Then I did something they didn't expect. I posted a single message to my private feed. Just one. No names. No accusations. Just facts. Sometimes the people who claim to love you will steal from you, lie to your face, and call it a favor. But love doesn't come with theft. And family doesn't come with forgery. I said nothing for weeks. But I'm done being quiet. I attached a single image, a blurred-out screenshot of the forged bill of sale. No names. But everyone who needed to understand, understood. Within an hour, the text stopped. The silence came back. But this time, it didn't feel like loneliness. It felt like peace. Because now, The burden wasn't mine anymore. I didn't need to defend myself. I didn't need to explain. The truth had spoken, and it spoke loudly. Later that night, Leo took my hand across the kitchen table. There was no speech, no dramatic music, just that quiet, steady warmth of someone who's seen you at your worst and chooses you anyway. Proud of you, he whispered. And I knew he meant it, not just for calling them out, but for choosing myself. The days after I posted the truth were quiet, not silent in the haunting way they had been before, not that kind of silence where you're holding your breath, waiting for the next blow. No, this was different. It was the kind of quiet you feel when you finally close a door that should have been shut years ago. There were no apologies, no attempts at real reconciliation. My parents, Brielle, and their circle of defenders simply vanished from my world. It was as if they hoped that by ignoring the truth, it might rot away in the shadows. But I didn't feel abandoned. I felt cleared out, like a storm had finally passed, and now, for the first time, I could breathe without the air being poisoned by guilt and expectation. Leo and I used to talk about moving, just in passing, little what-ifs tossed into late-night conversations. But now, it felt urgent, not as an escape, but as a declaration. We were building a life that didn't have space for people who broke us. So we packed, slowly at first, then with growing confidence. And I'll never forget the moment we handed over the keys to our old apartment, got in Leo's car, the very one they tried to steal, and drove away. It was symbolic, duh. It was freeing, duh. It was everything. We didn't move far, just a small rental in a neighboring city. But it felt like a new country, new grocery store, new neighbors, new rhythm. No memories of screaming matches or fake apologies or late night sobbing on the kitchen floor. Just quiet and growth. Leo got a promotion not long after we moved, and I started freelancing, finally doing the kind of work that fed my soul instead of depleting it. No more random calls from family trying to guilt-trip me into coming home. No more surprise visits. I changed my number. I locked my social accounts. I drew a boundary, a real one, and this time, I kept it. One afternoon, months later, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. But I knew the handwriting. It was from my mother. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. Because closure doesn't come from the people who hurt you. It comes from recognizing that their apology won't fix what they broke, and choosing to heal anyway. Now, when I look at Leo, I don't see just the man I love. I see the man who stood by me when my entire foundation crumbled. The man who waited patiently while I cried, screamed, shut down, then rebuilt. The man who never asked me to pick him over my family, but stood there quietly while I picked myself. We still talk about that car sometimes. The one they tried to erase from our lives like it didn't matter. It still runs, better than ever, actually. And every time I see Leo behind the wheel, I'm reminded. They tried to take something from us, but we took everything back. Our dignity, our peace, our freedom. And now, we're finally home.